The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. San Francisco Giant baseball, past, present, future. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The man is back. It's been 2-3 weeks. You've been traveling. Michael Duca, how are you, sir?
I'm present and accounted for, Ralph. Glad to be here.
And you've had some experiences on the road, traveling different states, different cultures. We're going to talk about that. But let's start with something I never wanted to start with. One of my two favorite baseball announcers passed away this past week. And he's Hank Greenwald, and you knew him, loved him, worked with him for many, many years. Michael, let's talk about Hank.
Well, Hank is a friend, and Hank's son, Doug, was my springtime roommate for many years at spring training. So I knew Hank, I know Carla, I know Kelly, I know Doug. And I know that a lot of people are feeling a lot of nostalgia because the voices of their youth are now largely gone. Bill King is gone, Hank Greenwald is gone, and Lon Simmons is gone. And I was privileged, and I mean that in the truest sense of the word, Ralph. I was privileged to know all three of those men, and each of them unique in their own way. You know, you could sit and hold a 2-hour conversation with Bill King on Russian literature or Russian opera or sailing or almost anything, except he would not have been the least bit interested in my new Tesla.
No, he drove a 30-year-old beater till the day he died, and not because he couldn't afford it.
No, because he didn't believe in cars.
Right. You drive him. Bill King was the kind of guy who would drive his car until it died on the freeway, and he'd leave it and buy a new beater.
Bill took pride in the fact that he never spent more than $500 for a car.
And this is in California, where cars are absolutely everything. We're kind of gotten away from that a little bit. Not in your case. You just bought a flaming red Tesla. What a beauty. What a beauty. And you were saying something on Facebook. It's only a few months to pay it off.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just 8 short years.
That'll go by just that quick.
Actually, it's 7. I did the calculations wrong in my head. Just 82 more payments remain. That's all, Ralph.
Well, should the countdown begin now? Should the champagne be bought? Should it be put on ice? You tell me.
I don't know. There may be a new general manager by the time it's paid off.
Right. For Tesla, too, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, well, and for the car.
Yeah. May I ask you this? On your trip, I don't want to skip. I don't want to sell Hank short in any way.
Oh, no.
Tell
God,
the story of your
this.
initial meeting with Hank. I read that on a Facebook posting, and I almost cried. It was
it was
and that
quintessential. Yep.
Quintessential wit.
It was quintessential and prototypical Hank Greenwald, and you know, if you took a step back and thought about what he said, you might be insulted by it, but I treasure it, and I laughed so hard I almost fell down.
Well, it shows that
Scottsdale Stadium.
You weren't insulted, and you laughed right then. I mean, it didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Tells me a lot about you as well as him.
Well, it was a brand new Scottsdale Stadium. The old one was a wooden construction, and even the outside of the stadium was boards. And the broadcast area was literally a plywood table at the top row of the bleachers behind home plate. So it was very exposed, and it was not uncommon for people to come up and get in their way during the game or try to participate in the broadcast, et cetera, et cetera. So we're here. My wife and I are down there for the opening of the new stadium and spring training. A real press box, a real broadcast booth, windows, the whole 9 yards, and it's sitting directly at the top of the stands behind home plate. So if you went to the top row of the bleachers there and stood on the step, you would be roughly eye level with the broadcasters. When the game was over, the windows were open. People lined up to go say hello to Hank and to I think it was Mike Kruko that was working with them even back then. And when my turn came, I got up to the window and I said, "Well, you must be thrilled to be in a real broadcast booth now and protected from the rabble." And without missing a beat, I don't think he even looked up from his score sheet. He said, "Doesn't seem to be working as well as I'd hoped."
Precious. He was dry. He always saw the good in things. And this is a man who worked 2 years for George Steinbrenner and didn't come away embittered.
This is a man who broadcast almost 2,800 games without missing one.
Whoa.
Without missing one.
Much like you have records as an official scorer that are much the same, along the same lines.
Yeah, I will just say this. Hank's belief was very simple, and I think this goes to what you were talking about. He said, "You can't do anything about having a bad game go on in front of you, but a bad game is no excuse for a bad broadcast."
That's why we tune in at times. Remember, the Giants in his heyday were a far cry from the Giants at AT&T. There was a lot of problems along the way going on, and he made it feel like you're talking to your best friend at the game. And you lose track of the fact that it is a broadcast when people like Hank, like Lon, like my favorite, one of my favorites, Ron Fairley. Ron Fairley could make you feel that way. He did the Giants for a while. I think he did the Giants with Hank.
He did. He did. I will never forget the Big Redhead's introduction. Literally, his introduction to Bay Area baseball fans. Ron Fairley was one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, despite coming from USC, and he was apparently a graduate of the Jerry Coleman School of Malaprops.
Right.
Because Fairley comes on first day of spring training, and he had broadcast for an American League team in Southern California, and he comes on the air and he says, "Welcome to another season of Angels baseball." Damn it, I knew I was going to do that. And he followed it up by one of those Fairleyisms. There were a couple of them that I just loved. He said, "We're here today in Scottsdale under a sky full of bright blue clouds." And the
That's
other
his
one
introduction to the Bay Area.
yes. And the other one that he did all the time, this was a speech mannerism of his, that's foul back over the tops of our head.
But he was home folk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, and he knew the game. He knew the game. He was a strong proponent. Whenever there was a runner in scoring position, he would remind you the batter's goal here is to hit the ball up the middle. The batter's goal is to hit the ball up the middle. Just try to turn it around, hit it back where it came from. Now
Right.
that was in the days before. Yeah, and also don't try to pull the ball. Try to hit it right back where it came from because that's your best chance of hitting a line drive. He would also point out that, if you're looking to drive in a run with a sacrifice fly, everybody says you want to look for a pitch you can elevate. He said what you really want to look for is a pitch that's a little bit up. Because if you get a pitch that's a little bit up and you hit down onto it, you put backspin on it, and it'll carry.
Whoa. Coming from a technical aspect as a professional hitter himself, he was a damn good hitter and a damn good fielder as well.
Yes, he was. And he was from, when we say back in the day, Ralph, a lot of people, don't realize, if you haven't been a baseball fan for 50 years, you don't realize the two biggest differences in baseball between today and 30 years ago are that the seventh and eighth guys in the bullpen can throw 96 now. They couldn't 30 years ago. And the 24th and 25th guys on the bench are 6'3", 235. 30 years ago, they were 5'9", 170. And there's a huge difference in how the game is played because of the size of the players now.
They mocked up a picture of Mantle standing next to Mike Trout. And it was...
Well, it's a good thing they didn't have a picture of Mantle standing behind Mike Trout because you wouldn't know Mantle existed.
Exactly. I mean, this guy, wider, and Mick was built like the traditional brick shit house. But this guy is just behemoth. I don't know if we've just accepted that we're going to have growth hormones or a natural better diet or whatever, but this is only one generation away. So I will conclude that whatever's being done.
I would say it's two generations. Mick was born in the 30s and nourished, such as it was, during the Depression in a part of Oklahoma that was devoted mostly to tin and asbestos mining. His dad didn't live very long. And that was a whole different world than the New Jersey that Mike Trout grew up in the 90s.
Sure. No question.
What
it's saying, we have to compare players, and we've known this all along, generation to generation. It's impossible to compare Tyko to Barry Bonds, for instance, and we're just going to live with that for the rest of our lives. I'll miss that. That's what I used to love to do when I was a kid, is make all-star teams of the different years, and we've talked about our dice baseball experiences, and to talk about using your imagination, you could throw dice and watch Ty Cobb run from first to third in your head when you weren't even alive when Ty Cobb played, that sort of thing. It's the only sport you could do that.
Right. I mean, I don't care how much imagination I have. I simply cannot imagine Marion Motley and Dick Mochulesky.
True. Dick Modulewski, God rest his soul or whatever, he passed away this week. I don't know.
Yes.
Number 72 at the New York Giants. When I was a kid, they had Greer, Modulewski, Robustelli, and Andy Robustelli, but who was the other? That was their defensive line. There was one more guy that I'm forgetting. Catkavich was
Jim Catkavich. Yeah.
Jim Catkavich. Wow, I would say that's good. I have a working knowledge. When I was a kid, I followed the 49ers a little bit because of Hugh McElhenney, and but I was a New York Giant fan. And for a California kid to remember Jim Catcavich's first name, that's pretty good. You got a great mind. And that is it. We're not even talking baseball.
Well, it's true, but you and I both know, Ralph, that when you get to a certain age, meaningless stuff from 60 years ago bubbles right to the surface, but what you're looking for in the bathroom, you can't figure out for hours.
Right, and I'm convinced it's so those thoughts can fill up the thoughts, so you wouldn't be thinking about pipe bombers. It gives us a relief from thinking about rallies, presidential rallies that inspire hatred and stuff. We could stop thinking about that for a while and get lost in our memories of the past. But one by one, all our heroes are leaving us, and it came to mind the other day that of the 1951 New York Giant baseball team that I watched as a kid on my grandfather's knee, literally, and the only surviving member of that team was Willie Mays.
Yeah, the rest are all gone. And what's amazing is I met many of them when the Giants brought them back for a 50-year reunion in 2001. And you know, so many of them, as you say, are gone. I mean, John Antonelli was on that team.
No, John Antonelli was on the 54 team.
54 team, okay. Maybe it was a 54 team that they brought back.
And didn't want to mislead anybody. Johnny Antonelli is still alive, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. That was why I was trying to work my way through it. Was it Danny Thompson, the second baseman?
Hank Thompson was
Alvin. No. This Danny. I remember Danny specifically, and he was Irish. He's still Irish when I met him.
No doubt.
Alvin Dark was there that day.
Eddie Stanky, maybe.
Monty Irvin was there. You know, there were just a whole bunch of guys. I did have the privilege of meeting Bobby Thompson. And discussing that day and the whole situation. And you know, the great thing about Hank was that he could bring those people to life, particularly during a bad game. You know, you listen to a Hank Greenwald broadcast. If you knew Hank, you listen to the broadcast just to see how he would work the disclaimer in. I mean, it became such a famous thing that his memoir was called This Copyrighted Broadcast.
It was a beautifully written book, too. It talked about his raising his daughter, the experience of that. She was a special needs child. I was happy to hear from your post she's still with us.
Oh, very much so. Kelly lives independently in Marin County in a group home and is doing very well.
Nice to hear. That is beautiful to hear. I I think his book came out shortly after his tenure with the Yankees. So that must have been 20-some-odd years ago.
1999. And the only reason I know that is I'm holding the book.
Oh, really? Ah, nice. Nice.
Yeah,
My memory
I brought
of
it
Hank,
down. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say I have a wonderful memory of Hank and his son playing catch. This is in the probably circa 86, 87, and they're playing catch on the field before father and son, obviously before a game, and Hank had his khaki pants. He was always dressed like the sportiest guy around. And that's what I remember him, his father and son moment, having a catch on the field. And I thought, how cool that is for both of them.
Indeed. And Mike Krukow labeled Hank with his nickname. Kruk gives us all nicknames. And Hank's nickname was the captain. And he was the captain both because he was in charge of the broadcast crew and also because, as Krukow said, Hank stepped into the booth looking like he was ready to take the wheel of a yacht.
Right. That's exactly his dress. I never ever saw him in a suit or tie, but if you could say there's a guy who's just casual yet well-dressed casual, if you know what I mean. He's natty.
Yeah, and I will correct one thing. Because Krukow has talked about this. He said you always wear a tie to work. It gets you in the proper mindset for the fact that you're coming to work.
He did wear a tie then.
Yeah, he wore a tie all the time in the booth.
Okay, then I do stand corrected. Or in this case, sit corrected, I might.
Well, that's better. I would rather have a sitting moderator anyway.
Okay, well, you got one. Like it or not. He's going to be missed. I mean, when the world he's one of those guys that passes away, the world won't be the same.
No, it won't. And I think one of the things that we need to begin doing is, I think, recognizing our treasures a little bit more while we have them. I think it's disgraceful that Bill King was gone for years before he was admitted into the Hall of Fame. There is absolutely no question in my mind, from the time that award was invented, Bill King had already earned it. The most versatile broadcaster I've ever heard in my life. And the same thing holds true with Hank. He's going to wind up being inducted posthumously, and that's unfortunate, because you know what that does? That robs the whole world of a Hank Greenwald acceptance speech, and that would have been worth the price of a ticket to Cooperstown.
Oh, yeah. Until you brought that up, the Hall of Fame didn't occur to me that he has been absolutely slighted. I think Ken Korak's book about Bill King helped him along the lines. Not having Hank's book was different. It was about Hank and it was written by Hank, so he never got the boost from anything to get in. And eventually his death will probably bring to mind, as it did with you and passing it on to me, that he should be in. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not include a guy who retires and then comes out of retirement almost a decade later and introduces himself to A's fans by saying, "Well, I should be well rested, fans. It's been 7 years between starts."
Night after night, he'd be witty, and I think we might have talked about this before, but Hank did a pregame show with Willie Mays for at least one season. And they taped like 5 minutes before the show, and I'm wondering if Hank got more out of Willie than I think anybody ever got. Maybe with the possible exception of Charles Einstein with Willie's Time, which was a classic. And I wondered back then when I asked you, and I wonder now if those tapes might still be somewhere, and if they could be brought back in some way, maybe by his son.
I will remind Doug that I asked him about them.
Okay.
Because I did ask him about them when you first mentioned it to me. He was, of course,
he may not have
on the
even
road
known if
for
they
Fresno
were available or whatever.
Well, and he was on the road with Fresno at the time, and it's hard to trace things down and make contacts and such. I think, we probably have to go back to. I don't know if any of the people from KNVR at that time are still around, and you'd have to try and find out what they've managed to maintain in their archives. I mean, the team has extensive archive. The team has an archivist, but I don't know if they maintain copies of the broadcasts.
Okay. Boy, it's amazing. The team has an archivist. I can remember I lived in Sacramento, and I had a part-time job with the Giants. Actually, I was an independent contractor, but I would fill buses full of fans in Sacramento and load them up and take them to the ball game. I'd have the bus driver drive, but fill up some seats in the 70s, and I was invited to their home office, their office at Candlestick and what have you, and it was run by about 5 people. So to say the Giants are in a spot where they have an archivist, they've come a long way since the days.
if you think about it for just a minute, Ralph.
Herseth, pardon me?
Yes, I mean, if you think about it for a minute, just think about how many team-owned photographs there are over 140 years?
Right.
I mean, just the photographs alone would require an archivist. Sure, you can stash them in a file cabinet, but if you want to actually know what's there and be able to find them, and believe me, they know what's there and they can find them.
At this point, but that took some putting stuff together, I can imagine.
Oh boy, yeah, I'm sure.
They had files and files of stuff with no indexes and nothing going. So that was a monumental task.
I'll tell you what probably spurred it. In 2004, I wrote an extensive series for Giants Today recapping the 1954 season. Each month we would recap a month of the 1954 season leading up to the postseason and what at that time was the last Giants World Championship. In the process of doing that, I became curious, and so I started asking around with the team, where is the 1954 pennant? They had it at Candlestick. They lost it in the move. And in the process of realizing that, the next thing I knew, there was an archivist.
Yes, they probably realized we don't want more of this going on. We have the richest tradition in baseball. Just off the subject for a second, and the guy's name was Danny O'Connell, if I remember.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we both don't have to die curious.
I just go to Baseball Reference.
Right.
I don't let anything bother me like that anymore.
Right. And you don't even have to type it in. You could just talk to it. I don't know if Baseball Reference, but Google, you could just talk now, listening. Danny O'Connell.
Hey, Google,
Danny.
who was the second baseman for the 1954 New York Baseball Giants?
Well, actually,
the second baseman was Siri.
It was Davy Williams was the starting second baseman.
That
he was on the. But again, I have nothing else in my head besides trivial manners, and I can't find my keys. We remember things from 60 years ago.
It's just as well that we can't find our keys, Ralph, because if we could find our keys, then we'd be sitting in the car wondering where we were going.
Right, and
that's dangerous.
And by the way, if you have keys, that means you have a car. How about having keys and not having a car? What is that? I can't find my keys, but it doesn't matter because I don't have a car. So.
Well, Ralph, I can do you one better than that. I have a house, I have a car, and I have no keys. I'm talking to you on my keys.
And your cell phone actually opens the door anymore, doesn't it?
Yep, it opens the door and it unlocks the car when I get close enough. So.
And what happens if you lose your cell phone? I'm just curious.
Well, if I lose my cell phone, I have to remember the combination to the front door lock, and I have to pull out my credit card size Tesla key to get into the car.
Okay.
Also happens if my cell phone battery goes dead, I have to be prepared for it. But the bottom line is, even with the even with the credit card key, I don't have another thing to remember. I don't want to take that through TSA.
Yeah.
That's a very
let me tell you something,
feeling.
Michael, that on paper, technology makes our lives simpler and easier. On paper.
Well, I think what you want to say there is in theory, because the notion of technology.
Oh, yes, in theory.
Without.
I was going to use a baseball expression, like we don't play the game on paper. On paper, the Giants have this or that, but we don't play the game on paper. On paper, or as you will say, in theory, that makes much more sense on some levels. In theory, it makes it. But I notice it every day. I love technology. Couldn't have a podcast. Couldn't have a lot of things. Couldn't be able to say to the computer, "Find me, satisfy my curiosity." Boom, and they do it. But there's some stress that goes along with that on a daily basis, be it the computer running slow or the internet or stuff like that. That's all.
Well, there's that, and I think
you give some, you take some. It doesn't always turn out right.
I think too, Ralph, to be honest with you, I think one of the greatest stresses that comes from technology is the fact that with the rapidity with which information can be made available literally before we understand what it means, that people are now so conditioned to breaking news alerts and their phone buzzing in their pockets with, everything from Draymond Green having 9 assists in 11 minutes to, God knows what else showed up on my phone last night. But we are getting so used to that we now live our lives in fear that we're going to miss something, that we're going to be the guy that doesn't know, or the woman that doesn't know the critical piece of news that everybody else is talking about or obsessing over or giggling about or lying about or whatever the hell they're doing about it. We now have gotten ourselves into a situation where we spend more time than it makes sense staring at the phone, waiting for it to tell us the next big thing so that we can know it before somebody else does, just to prove that we're not behind the curve. And that's an unwinnable game, and it's a fool's game.
Yep. Let's say it's just a different world than our parents lived in, or our grandparents. What would your grandparents be most shocked at living if they woke up to see what became of their beloved America?
Well, let me start with this. All of my grandparents were not Americans.
Okay. Nor mine, but mine came to America.
My grandfather was born in Sicily and returned in 1953. So while he met me, I never met him. My grandmother was born in Italy and died of a disease that we treat for about $6 a month now in 1926. So obviously I never met her. My grandfather on my mother's side is unknown, but my grandmother's husband and my grandmother were both from Germany and came over after World War I, and I don't believe either of them ever acquired citizenship. For that matter, my mother was never an American citizen. She was she had to register and fill out a green card every year by January 20th as a resident alien, and she never was able to apply for American citizenship because they were never able to find a birth certificate for her. She was born on the border between Germany and Switzerland during World War I, and there was always this family legend that her mother had walked across the bridge into Switzerland so that she would be born there, but there was no record of her birth in Switzerland. You know, I researched it, tried to find a birth certificate for her so that she could apply for American citizenship, but they were never able to find one. So, what would they be most shocked by?
May I rephrase the question then?
Sure.
What would they react? How would they react to the way the world is today?
Oh, I think they'd find it disturbingly familiar. You know, they came over, all of them came over in steerage. All of them came over on the, sixth deck of the boat down below the waterline. They came to this country with no English whatsoever, and certainly no in-demand skills. My grandfather on my father's side was a stonemason. So he moved to Los Angeles and became a hod carrier, which, if you know what that is, Ralph, it's one of the most thankless and difficult jobs a human being can do. It's where a hod was a 90-degree shaped, basically a V of wood that was filled with stucco, put on a pole, and a hod carrier would climb a ladder and hold that up high enough for the stucco mason to scrape it out and apply it to a home that was being built. It was backbreaking work. My grandfather was 5'3" and 120 pounds, and so strong that after a full day of work, when he would come home, he would meet his kids at the streetcar stop, all four of them, and all four of them he would stretch his arms out fully as though on a crucifix. And all 4 of his kids would hang from his arms, and he would carry them home.
Wow.
No in-demand skills whatsoever. My grandfather on my mother's side was a waiter until he was 83 years old. He was a waiter at a German restaurant in Salt Lake City because he didn't speak much English. Still. And the women were homemakers. They wouldn't recognize some of the attitudes in this country, but they would recognize more of them than you'd like to think, because the Germans were looked at as enemies after World War I, of course, and looked at with suspicion. And then World War II rolled around, and everybody had Liberty Gardens, and you ate Liberty cabbage. There was no such thing as sauerkraut during the war. And on the Italian side, Italians were below Irish on the immigration ladder, and Italians were always suspected of, Sicily is just 80 miles from Morocco, I believe it is, and or maybe it's Tunisia. I don't know my African geography that well, but very close to Africa. On some hilltops, you can actually see Africa over the horizon, or on the horizon from Sicily. And it was commonly thought in those days that Sicilians were black people. They were just,
really
cleverly disguised black people. Well, much like the rumor about Babe Ruth for years and years and years. And so I think my grandparents would recognize the fear. I think they would recognize the distrust. I think they would recognize the poorly disguised hatred. But they...
How can a country of immigrants, we're all immigrants, how could they hate, not we hate, but how could there be such hatred for immigrants? I don't understand that.
Well, Ralph, if you are born into a nation that teaches you that America was discovered by white people, settled by white people, colonized by white people, and became prosperous because of white people, then immigrants that aren't white people are, in their mind at least, are diluting the talent pool.
Yeah, but I guess I thought they settled that with Jesse Owens type thing, that master race bullshit.
I'm not talking about master race bullshit, and it is. And I'm not talking here about pure, unadulterated racism. I'm talking about how easy it is if you are born and raised with this whole mythology of America didn't exist until white people named it. America didn't exist until white people found it, settled it. Then it becomes fairly easy for you to see those who come in after the success has been achieved as riding coattails. And what I'm trying to tell you is that yes, it was settled by the Dutch, yes, it was settled by the English, but what I'm trying to tell you is the Irish, who come from the same damned island as the British, were looked down on. And the Italians were looked down on. And the Greeks were looked down on, just as the Hispanics are looked down on today. One of the great verities of society is that society, no matter where you are, has an other. From creation myth forward, there's always an other. There's an other in the Bible story.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, the religion most devoted to peace and acceptance, and I mean, if you read and believe in the New Testament scriptures, and yet in order to keep people compliant with the teachings, there's an other. There's a bad place you wind up. There's bad guys coming to get you if you don't act right. And that's amazingly present in almost every culture you can imagine.
Hey, the expression will throw the fear of God into you, as an example.
Well, there's that, but I'm thinking, of the enmity even between different peoples in Southeast Asia. I won't label these with national terms because the phrases that people use predate the countries that they come from. But there are people there that are derisively called the garlic eaters. And there are people in other parts of Southeast Asia that are known as coconut heads or Buddha heads to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That, inter-Asian racism, if you will. So, it's not peculiarly American. It's not peculiarly white. We just, as the white nationalists will tell you, we do a better job than anyone else. Well, we do a better job of racism than anyone else too. We've raised it to the state of the art.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all based on fear of jobs, of security, of family.
If that's true, and I think you're absolutely correct. And if that's true, Ralph, I read a statistic the other day that would, if it's true, will accelerate this problem so badly that we will probably not be able to control it. And that is this. Intel is currently running an ad that says 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2035, it's just 17 years from now, 80%, 85% of those jobs don't even exist today.
Whoa.
That means that the vast preponderance of people who have work now will either be doing something completely different and unknown, or they'll be doing nothing.
Right.
And if we do not,
you could look at that. You could look at things like that with a positive attitude. One could. I don't tend to be naturally positive, but if you look at things like the deterioration of our climate, and the ecologists are saying, well, it's getting to the point where we're not going to be able to reverse it. Same thing holds true. Knowledge begets knowledge. These computers enable us to build knowledge. They'll be able to go back, hopefully, looking at it positively, they'll be able to correct what we're destroying with methods that we haven't even thought of yet.
All of that is certainly true. But what else is certainly true is that the only way that a society can survive this, literally the only way that a society can survive this, is to embrace change. Not to tolerate it, not to adapt to it, to embrace it. We've been being told this since you and I were young. The Greening of America. Remember that book?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Passages. These were all trying to tell us, look out, folks, the one constant in this world is that the rate of change is accelerating. and it will continue to. There is no break to apply. And what I see going on right now in our country is people who are terrified of change, pushing on every lever they can find, hoping it's a break. And instead of it being a break, what they're doing is they're breaking the society.
Well said. Well said. Pushing on every lever they can find, hoping it's a break.
And the thing is, you can feel for those people. You really can. When I drive from Knoxville to Nashville, I drive through parts of Tennessee that are achingly beautiful, places where you can buy acres of land for $1,000 and probably have $15,000 worth of timber on the land that you can cut if you wanted to. But I also drove by, I never in my life had I driven past a coal-fired power plant before. It's kind of astonishing to see a 300-foot mountain of coal sitting outside a building with a conveyor belt in it. It's their way of life is under assault, and so they're responding. And now our way of life is under assault, and you know how you feel about that, so you can imagine how they feel.
Mm-hmm. Whoa. Hey, we've talked a lot today. We haven't talked at all, and we must, about the Giants. Quick summary of this year and even quicker look towards next. Real quick. What went good?
Well,
what went bad?
The quick summary of this year is that you have to be thankful that the Affordable Care Act was still in existence, because if it wasn't, the Giants would probably have been bankrupted by their medical bills. It's hard to fathom how many games were lost to the disabled list this year. And they're facing next year again without Johnny Cueto. What's good is that I think some of the marginal players played their way out of the organization and did so without a lot of sentimentality, which I think is an important thing going forward. You love and you respect and you honor the teams that won the World Series, but you also, you have to look at the fact that I believe I heard that there is one member of the Red Sox who was on their last World Series team. And that was what?
Wow.
5 years ago?
That's scary. That shows how fast and how quickly things turn over.
Well, they do. We look at guys who have, 20-plus year careers like Barry Bonds and Junior Griffey, and we just sort of assume that. But, the average NFL player's career is 3.2 years. The average Major League Baseball player's career is about 4.1 years. So, you're going to see that kind of turnover. And if the average career is 4 years, then that means that over a 5-year span, on average, the bulk of your team will turn over.
Yeah, but 100% or 99%, that's, you would think it would be slower than that. Just to give you an example, the 51 Giant team was basically the same as the 54 Giant team.
Right. Well, in the days when the reserve clause was in effect, things were somewhat different. But you also have to remember that back in those days, if you suffered an ACL injury, your career was over.
An arm injury, simple arthroscopic surgery would have saved careers back then.
Yeah, but we didn't know. We didn't have arthroscopy. And we didn't know all that much about how stuff worked. We were, when I was in high school, the terminology still existed. Oh, he's got a sore hose. He just needs to throw through it. He just needs to get out there and throw through it. He'll get better. Well, if you've got a detached tendon in your elbow, that's probably not going to help it to throw through it.
Right. And we didn't have the X-ray, the MRI to determine damage from injury or hurt from strain or whatever.
Well, the best part about the MRI is that it's non-invasive. You get to find out without leaving a scar. You could always find out the extent of the injury, but it was called exploratory surgery.
But from what I understand, there's a touch of radiation that you really don't want to go through on a regular basis.
What you don't want to do is you don't want to undergo MRI if you have any metal in your body. You have to be very careful about things like fillings in your teeth. And, it's magnetic resonance, so anything with iron. And what people don't realize is that tattoos create a serious problem in an MRI. In specific, tattoos with black ink. Black ink is iron-based.
Whoa. Did not know that. Don't have a tattoo. But that's a little more knowledge up there that will keep me from finding those keys after all. Because the brain only holds so much, let me tell you. And mine is small and not all that subtle. Subtle.
So,
hey, listen, give me some hope.
Yeah, to get back on topic.
Give me some hope for next year, my friend, because
I'm
looking at the Dodgers in the World Series, and I'm not really rooting against them, which scares me on some level. Have I lost all that competitiveness? But I don't like it, and I'd like some hope that next year will be. You can't tell by injuries. You have no idea if it's going to be better that way. But what do you see that's going to bring a smile to both of our faces?
Full year of Derek Rodriguez. Probably a full year of Chris Stratton. Probably a full year of Madison Bumgarner. Kid named Anderson in the minor leagues who may break into that rotation also, who was one of the two pitchers that they got from the Red Sox in the Edwin Nunez trade. And then there's just, there's all the possibilities out there. I mean, a full year of Steven Ducker, a possibility of Chris Shaw being able to find his way into the outfield. There's a lot of young players there. The question is, are they a lot of young mediocre players or 4A players, or are they actually players that can develop into major league talent? Baseball is a very, very, I liken baseball to middle school. The minute one popular kid does something, even if the trend is, a henna tattoo on your eyelid, everybody's got to do it. So now everybody's into launch angle and, strikeouts don't matter. Well, I think the Red Sox are beginning to belie that. I think the Red Sox are starting to show people that you can be analytics-based when it comes to finding players, that you can be analytics-based when it comes to building a lineup, but you cannot be analytics-based when it comes to managing a game. The game unfolds in front of you faster than you can deal with the analytics. And you've got to go back to understanding the basics. And the basics in baseball are the team that scores more runs wins the game. How do you score runs? You score runs by advancing around the bases. It says it right in the rule book. You advance around the bases. And you can advance around the bases if somebody hits the ball out of the ballpark. But that's not the only way you can advance around the bases. You can also take your walks. You can also
get the guy over.
Move the guy over. You can situationally. I mean, if you look at the Red Sox, they may be the best situational hitting team I've ever seen. They, unlike most teams in the American League, they have not eschewed the stolen base. They embrace it. They utilize it. They go first to third. They understand that speed has a place in the game. You don't need to be very fast around the bases if somebody hits a 500-foot shot out on a Lansdowne Street. But you don't have to rely on that either. I mean, one of these teams led the National League in home runs. The other one is up 2-0 in the series.
Very good point. And ironically, it's Dave Roberts that really appreciates the value of a stolen base more than most humans, has to sit and watch it unfold right in front of him as the Dodgers manager. So baseball has a way of playing with your head.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I am Facebook friends and personal friends with Tim Flannery, the ex-Giants third base coach. And Flan and I talk all the time about, how it is to be functioning in the modern baseball world when you're seen as a brontosaurus. We still believe in moving the runner over. We still believe that nothing good comes from a strikeout unless it's the old Casey Stengel adage when his pitcher was going to the plate with runners on first and second or bases loaded, and he'd say, "Now, kid, if you think you're going to hit into a double play here, strike out."
I remember that. I remember him saying stuff like that. Casey would pinch hit for, say, a Cleat Boyer in the first inning. Can you imagine what that does to a kid's head? And he didn't care. Casey says, half of them hate me, half of them love me. I just keep the ones that are undecided out of both schools, that type of thing. Keep the players who don't know away from the players who hate you. And he went through a lot of infielders, Jerry Lumpy and Andy Carey and what have you. But he was an amazing manager. Let me say something good about Dusty Baker. I read an article about him recently citing some things based on how teams that he was fired from did over the next 7 years.
Not very well.
Not very well at all. One of the most beloved and underrated baseball men going, and I will always be pissed at the Washington Nationals by the way they handled his dismissal. They're entitled to choose somebody else. They're entitled to go in a different direction. But to leave the man hanging in Washington for 2 or 3 days and not getting back to him as planned was absolutely disgraceful. And I will mention that on as many podcasts as I do that I could work it into, or it comes up for the rest of my life. This was a man that was slighted, and a good example of what the corporate world can do to the worker. Now, you say, worker, he made $1 million that year, this, that, or the other thing, and if one thinks along those lines, they're missing the boat. is all. It ain't just about the money. It's about being treated like a human being by a team, period. That's my rant.
Well, as you know, as an employee and a contractor to Major League Baseball, I have to be very cautious in my pronouncements about member clubs and their ownership. Let's just say I don't have an argument to present to oppose that.
Okay. Well, and it's not the only example in baseball and in the corporate world, believe me.
No.
But
Far from it.
And that's what's sad and disgusting, that baseball. I'm a kid. I'm following it because I didn't like the front page. I liked the back page. In New York, the sports are always on the back, and you read like in Yiddish. You read from back to front, from right to left. And now, the older I get, I was fooled. It was business back then, but they didn't throw it in our faces as they do today. 7 different uniform combinations. You can buy 12 hats in the clubhouse store. You can buy all those uniforms, but one for every day for you, kid. Every day of the week. Get them 7. That kind of thing. It's just corporate greed, and
you're absolutely correct. But I have to remind you that the year after he hit 57 home runs, Ralph Kiner went in and asked for a $5,000 raise from the Pirates. You know what his general manager, Branch Rickey, said to him?
We lose without you. We could lose without you. We lost without you.
He said, son, we finished last with you. We sure as hell finished last without you.
Right. Well, that's what all the podcasters say about me on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I am the weak link of it all, Ralph Tyko. One of the strongest links is Michael Duca. Happy to have you on the network. Happy to have you as my bud.
Glad to be here always, Ralph. Thank you for the opportunity.
Beautiful. Let's do it on the porch at the 420 studio on Lincoln Avenue in Alameda at your earliest convenience. We'll walk down. We'll get a Nathan's. We'll bring Jerry Feidelberg with us, and we'll have a nice day of it.
We can do that. Stay in touch. I might be able to squeeze that in next week.
Beautiful. Jerry will be back from Hawaii then, and that will
insufferable because of it.
Well, he can put up with it. We put up with it.
No, he'll be insufferable because of it. He'll be just freshly back from Hawaii.
I got
and by
you. Yeah,
his Red Sox will probably be the champions. And we'll have to, the best part about it is that I know Jerry does like to eat, so he will stop to chew.
Absolutely, and we've Jerry and I have a habit of going to Nathan's over on Nathan's. Boy, listen to me, Nations on Webster Avenue in Alameda, and
for a minute I thought we were going to go see the Cyclone on Coney Island, but okay.
Well, for a second that was the Nathan's that's in the back of my head. And always will be. My grandma, we used to stop there before the cyclone came. Not before the cyclone, but before the ballparks. Naturally, there's a ballpark there. Beautiful little minor league stadium. But before that, my grandma was sitting in Nason's or standing there getting a hot dog, and she says, "You know what I like about this place?" I said, "No, what, Grandma?" She says, "It's only one stop away from their funeral, from their cemetery, and you'll be able to come visit every time you come to Nathan's. It's just one stop away on the subway. It'll be easy for you." I said, "Don't rush it, Grandma. Take your time." And she did, but
you should remember that
all
if you have a hot dog, to also have a rock in your pocket just in case. I want to leave it on the headstone.
Absolutely. Leave something. Wow. I get to cheer up on these shows almost daily, and just did then. Here's to you, Rose Niss. It was a wonderful memory. You were a great grandmother. Not all that great a cook. You knew it. I knew it. But a great grandmother. And would have been a great grandmother to her great-grandson, Philip, amongst others. Had she lived to see it. God bless her. God bless you too, Michael. You listen to me.
As my Uncle Tony used to say, he was talking about certain types of pasta, but we'll change it slightly for you. Her knishes lay in your stomach like they lay in the bowl.
Very good. Very good. We'll talk food and much more next time we meet. Thank you, Michael.
All right, and I'm very glad to see we brought it full circle. We started out talking about honoring those from the past who have passed, and we managed to bring it home right at the end. So there you go.
Rest in peace, Hank Greenwald. Rest in peace, Rose Niss, and thousands of others. Be well, Michael.
Thank you.
See you soon. Thanks for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Adios. The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.